Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Recruitment. I'm your host, Levi, and today's episode I'm joined by Cory McGowan, who is a coach like myself, and he's also someone who has a special place in his heart for the Japanese countryside. He currently lives in Minakami in Gunma, which is a place that is known for its natural beauty in all four seasons. I have visited him one time. I highly recommend it. He has his Adventure Mondays where you just hit him up and you go and explore around his neck of the woods. So, the first half of this podcast episode, we talk about his journey and what led him to moving out to the countryside as well as building up his business. The second half of the podcast, we talk about what is his vision for his coaching, what is he actually doing with people, how does it help them, and I thought it was quite interesting how he's building adventure into his life coaching practice. So please enjoy the episode. Let me know, as always, if you have any feedback. All the best. All right, welcome back, everyone, and welcome, Cory, to the podcast.
Thanks, Levi. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, you have some experience in recruitment, which is kind of the connection here, but I think maybe we have even more gyotsu-ten or things in common in terms of the coaching space and the retreat space and living in the countryside. So, but to set the stage for us, what was your journey in terms of coming and joining recruitment?
So I've been in Japan since '99, and only planned to be here for a few months. And the only way to stay longer than I wanted to was to get an English teaching job, which I actually really enjoyed, and started out in Aichi doing that, and then moved to Chiba and worked at a bigger company that had a lot of schools all over Chiba, and ended up pretty quickly becoming a recruiter for that company, recruiting teachers. And then that experience ended up being a bridge for me to work in executive search in Tokyo. And I worked at a company at the time that was called CDS, and that has since changed into RGF as part of the Recruit umbrella company. So yeah, that was like 2006 or something like that, I think, somewhere around there.
Yeah. How was your experience as a recruiter? How long were you there for? And
Yeah. Um, Pretty fast. I think I made it about a year and a half. And the great stuff I remember was the people at CDS. So it was run at that time by Simon Childs and Jason Dacare, and it was a time when people who had like some ambition and will and energy but not much experience could be kind of brought up, and the two of them were really great in doing that. And it was a great group of people at the organization at the time as well. Um, but I felt really out of place in the business world. It's just like, oh man, what am I doing in this suit, and what am I doing, talking to these high level leaders. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, but that was probably one of the most valuable parts of the experience as well, is to get comfortable with those conversations pretty quickly. Um, but it was also, I was newly married and newly had our first child, and working on commission in that situation was like, oh man. So when the opportunity for a really unique, different job came along, I jumped on it. And it all worked out really well. And of course, as soon as I left CDS, like all my deals came through. And credit to CDS, they were awesome about that. So it ended up being a pretty successful leave from a financial standpoint.
wow, they paid you.
Yeah. Yeah, man. They
That's
were really
pretty
good.
cool.
They were
That's
really
pretty
good.
cool.
Yeah.
What was the job opportunity, and how did that just how did that drop onto your lap?
So it was working at a place called Kidzania Tokyo, it's called an edutainment theme park, and it was brand new to Tokyo. It was franchised out of Mexico, but Tokyo was the first one, and it was at Lalaport in Toyosu. So the concept is that it's in a shopping mall, but it's basically like a city for kids. Um, And yeah, an American friend of mine who had been working there reached out. He had joined right when the company started up, and this was about a year later, and he was looking for a bit of help, kind of like training some of the staff there to be able to use English with non-Japanese guests to the park. Um, So yeah, it was new, it was different. It was like the CEO is this Japanese guy who was really compelling. And it felt like a good move. Again, it was like it was going to be a solid paycheck. It certainly didn't have the earning potential that recruiting did, but it was a good fit at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then at what point did you, I mean, we're fast forwarding a little bit, but at
hmm
what point did you realize that you wanted to leave Tokyo and get out to the countryside?
Yeah. Question. I haven't really thought about it in that way. I mean, there had been conversations. So we have two kids, and there had been conversations pretty early on about like, would we potentially move back to the US or would we move somewhere else? I'm from Maine in the US, which is pretty rural. So being in Tokyo was always super challenging for me. Um, so we had been talking about different options, and by chance, a friend of ours had a place out here in Minakami that he let us use a couple times a year. And after doing that for like a year or two, it was like, oh wow, this could actually be a fit. Yeah, and that was more than 7 years ago now.
So it was not premeditated at all or something that you had really thought of and planned. It was just, we're going to go out and start, experiencing the countryside, and then you got
Uh,
hooked. And
yeah.
then decided to just make the full move. What was the main draw? Like what? Because it's different to go on a summer holiday or a ski trip, and
hmm
it's actually living in a place like
Yeah.
Minakami. Not that it's that crazily far away,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for summarizing my whole life by saying it wasn't really that well thought out or planned. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much how it's gone. Um, but yeah, there had been some discussions, and then, it was literally like being out here on a weekend and going on a Sunday and going home and talking to Miho about it, and her not immediately saying, that's absurd. Her actually like
mm,
considering it. Um, yeah, and just a lot of things lined up at the time to make it happen. She had like a contract finishing with the work she was doing, and I was working at Tokyo American Club at the time, and they were actually really amazing about like supporting it both from the commutation fees because I commuted by Shinkansen from here, and then also allowing me some flexibility to do my work while I was on the Shinkansen, which allowed me to shift my working hours a little bit. So yeah, it all lined up really well. Yeah, yeah, and
nice.
the draw was just like Minakami is really dramatic from a just from like a wilderness perspective and from the views that you get here, and the place that my friend let us use was right on the river, on the Tonegawa River, and so there was that aspect, but then there was also um, a decent history of non-Japanese people living here and like a friendliness to that and a welcomeness to that. So it was a place in rural Japan where we had a pretty good idea that we could land and like land fairly comfortably. And that was like, I would say we almost underestimated how true that was looking back now.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
quite easy, actually, is what you're saying, even more than you thought to make that
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the boys at the time were 10 and 7, and that was, I think, probably kind of a sweet spot because they weren't quite to the age where they would have been like, no, we don't want to leave our friends in Tokyo. It was just like, oh,
Hmm.
everything's fun. Yeah, let's go. So that worked, and they felt really welcomed in the school that they came to here. Obviously, it was much, much smaller than their school in Tokyo,
Hmm.
but they felt really welcomed there. The people in the neighborhood where we live were really wonderful. And Miho took to it pretty quickly. She didn't have any experience driving, so that was a new thing. But we came
Wow.
out here in March, so we had plenty of time before she actually had to drive in the winter. So in that ways, like the planning, timing of it and stuff worked out pretty well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And job wise, and I'm not even sure if I know this story, but
Yeah.
what led you to becoming a coach? And yeah, did it have anything to do with your lifestyle and that shift, or?
Um, Initially, it didn't. It was actually that move to Kidzania, which was probably kind of like the roots of it, because I moved pretty quickly into a director level role within that organization. And so
Mm,
then really got an up close view at like, whoa, management. Can we swear in this podcast?
yeah, no,
Management can be pretty
go ahead.
fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like, like a male leader, director, like screaming at a female colleague, just like, what is going on here? And at a place that's supposed to
Mm,
be like setting an example about how good it is for, to kids to learn about work and all this. So yeah, that just started to make me curious. It's like, why does this happen? How does it happen this way? So I started to learn about organizational development and actually moved into that type of role when I moved into Tokyo American Club. And then Tokyo American Club, again, just like really supportive. When I learned about coaching and decided to go for a certification, they supported that. And I got to start coaching some of the leaders internally there. So I got to get some experience pretty quickly. And then I started to work with some heads of some different NPOs in Tokyo pretty early on. And that was some really good experience. Um, so I knew that like as soon as I got into that coaching training, I could sense like, wow, this is like really my work. This is like my sweet spot for the way that I like to work with people, getting into like deep conversation with them and working one on one. So yeah, I had a lot of sense of the work, but then a year after moving out here, I got offered the job to run one of the big outdoor companies, canyons in Minakami, along with Mike, the guy who is the CEO and the owner. And it was just like, oh, I got to do that. Like this will be the dream job. And so there was actually a year where I really wasn't doing any coaching at all because I was focusing on that.
mm,
Um, and that fell apart spectacularly, like so many things did around the COVID time period. And
mm,
that was actually when the lifestyle piece came into it, because it was like, well, I'm not going back into Tokyo. I'm not putting a friggin' suit
mm,
on again. And I hired my own coach. And she partnered with me in seeing, like, well, wait a minute. If I could really do anything I wanted, I'd be sitting in the space that I am right now, and I'd be inviting leaders to come out and join me in the places that I love as part of the coaching journey. And so over the past 5 years
mm.
or so, that's what I've been building.
Wow. So it was actually a
Yeah.
conversation with your coach that helped to
Many,
inspire
yeah.
and your many coaches.
No, many conversations with that
Oh,
coach.
many
Many
conversations
conversations with that coach.
to
Yeah.
build up kind of was it a I mean was this something as a coachee, I guess, like I'm curious, was this something that you knew what you wanted deep down but you weren't like able to admit this, or this is something that was kind of
Mm,
obscured by some other expectation, or can you give us a little
hmm.
bit of insight about
Yeah.
how you found this path?
Yeah. Thanks for digging on that, Levi. I like that. It was running the outdoor company not working out really knocked me on my ass, right? It was here we are mid COVID. Here I am a provider for a family of four. I had made kind of promises to my wife about sticking with the job in Tokyo, and she had taken the leap of faith with me to take this new role, and it was all gone. And so I was really at a low point in like, fuck, what am I doing? Can I pull this off? And so I would say what my coach helped me to do the most is to kind of come back into like just the natural power of who I am, like who we all are, right? I'm not saying it's special about me, but just like realizing, I could do this, I could have a vision about this thing. And she helped me to kind of build that vision out. She even helped me to name the company Adventure Partners. Like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like partner with people in the coaching journey, but by bringing them out on adventure and even having the coaching conversations themselves be around the theme of adventure. So it was helping me to like see through some of those limiting beliefs of like, well, the only way to work again is to work for a company and to do these things and see like, well, wait a minute, if I could create it any way that I wanted, what would it be? So yeah,
Hmm.
does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean the
Yeah.
word adventure, adventure partners, it's in the name and it's coming up quite a bit. I'm curious, what
Mm.
does that mean to you?
Mm. Yeah, I think a big part of it is whether we whether we like to admit it or not, and especially like in the really current times that we're in, we just don't know what's coming next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different ways to respond to that. All of
Yeah.
them totally
Yeah.
understandable. Um, but the one that I want to choose as much as possible is with a sense of like, okay, well, this is an adventure, right? And so what does that
Hmm.
require of me? What could be fun and wild about it? What would I want to pay attention to? What do I want to feel? Um, and working with leaders and executives so much, like their work is so complex. And again, especially now, there's so much unknown in terms of what's coming. Um, so helping people step into like, well, if I could treat this more of an adventure as opposed to like something that's happening to me or something that I can
Mm.
only like be reactive to. Yeah, it's that. As I kind of joked about earlier, um, my life has kind of always been about that. Like even the trip to Japan, it was like I came with a backpack and a surfboard and like no knowledge of Japan. And it's really fun to live that way. And then there's also like um, yeah, the reality of supporting a family and all that. And actually then being an entrepreneur is like, this is probably like one of the most challenging adventures I've been on yet, because as you know, it's pretty challenging to be a solopreneur and to continue to find the right people to work with and all that. And particularly with this, my approach is maybe different than a lot of executive coaches or leadership coaches, and that can make it challenging for people to understand what the approach is and then to really want to like buy into it. Um, yeah.
And your approach being basically welcoming people out to this community in nature and experiencing adventure physically.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
am I okay?
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like most of us these days, the majority of my work is having conversations the way we are, remotely.
Mm-hmm.
But more and more as I work with leaders, my kind of stand and offer for people is the first step is to come out here on a wilderness visioning retreat, because that sets the foundation for the whole year of work, right? So come out here, be separated from your normal day to day, be in some deep wilderness at the base of Tanigawa Mountain, um, and let's kind of talk about what that next thing is. What is it that you're going to create in the next 6 to 12 months, um, and combine that with some outdoor adventure challenge and some of the different activities that we do while people are out here. And because I've done that many times now and see the impact of it, I'm getting clearer and clearer on that's like the first bar to get to do work with me is the agreement to do that level of commitment to step into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's part of it is it's the way that I know that has the most impact, but I also know that it's in support of my community here because you come and stay at one of my partners' accommodations. I work with partner guides out here. We serve local food from partners. And so, like, the kind of dream scenario of my business that I never anticipated when having conversations with that coach at the time was wow, I actually contribute to my local business community ecosystem by bringing these clients out to do this work. So it's just like winning all around.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I totally can picture, you guys out there. It's totally different probably from where most of these executives are living their life, right?
Hmm.
Again, in the city somewhere in an apartment having these calls with you, but then maybe having that anchor point of when their spirit or, they are just totally free in some sense
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just so different from their daily life. I can see that would be like a really, you know, potentially important marker, I
Hmm.
guess, or
Hmm.
like a checkpoint in some sense
Yeah.
in their life adventure. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very cool. And I'm curious, like, what kinds of people will generally work, like, reach out to you, or that you will work with.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I'm working generally with people at fairly high level in executive roles, um, which again makes this offer challenging because it's saying take 4 days away from your business to go and do this, like focus on yourself and your
Mm.
development. Um, but it's been a pretty mixed bag. I've been kind of resistant to the idea of like forming a niche as a coach, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
been more organic of like who are the people in my network, who are the people that I get introductions to, and then who are a fit based on the type of work that I do. But generally, director up to C-level people, both in and outside of Japan, are the people that I've had probably the most recent experience with over the past 2 or 3 years. And those are the types of people that have come out on the retreat as well, and then engaged for a year or more in the executive coaching work.
What kind of, I guess, I don't know if you would frame it as a problem that they're
Mhm.
facing, or what are the symptoms, maybe the pain points? Can you speak a little bit to if there's any commonality, or just generally what those have been?
Yeah, yeah. Transition is a big one. So, for example, like working within a multinational organization and transitioning like between levels in that organization.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also figuring out how to slow down a bit in their work to be
Mm-hmm.
able to be more aware of how to be like responsive as opposed to reactive, right? Like getting a bit more in
Mm.
touch with like what are my own processes of how I'm dealing with complex situations, and how can I create more of a balance and more of a sense of myself in the work instead of just being like, full on go all the time, kind of overwork grit type stuff.
Mm.
So those are probably two themes. The coaching approach I use is called an ontological approach. And so basically, simply what that means is looking more at a level of who people are being as opposed to just what they're doing, right? So a lot of performance coaching can focus on like these frameworks of how to get to A and B through these different things that you do, and that can be great and really appropriate for a lot of leaders. But the people that tend to be drawn to my work want to look a little bit more at like, well, what is it about who I'm being as a leader that actually has my team showing up the way they're showing up, right? So a willingness to take responsibility for like the team being a reflection of the leader, and the
Mm.
leader saying, well, actually, if I can show up in a way that works better both for me and for my team, then I'll also see that reflection in the team and see things start to change within the organization.
Mm. It sounds like a little bit more of like a right brain approach, almost like if less like logical step by step. We're going to do XYZ to get,
Hmm.
ABC result or something, and more, this is who you're being in this moment. Realize, who you're being, and then
Yeah.
when you are faced with some decision or uncertainty, then you know how that best version of you would act. I don't know.
Hmm.
Is this kind of
Yeah, I always get the right brain and left brain stuff mixed up. So I'll just be honest about that. Um, but it
like
is it
more
is looking
creative?
beyond.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it is looking beyond like strictly like strategy and tactical stuff, and saying like, how do I notice the way that I'm showing up, or even how does my team notice the way that I'm showing up?
Mm-hmm.
At the level of being. So it can even be different than like the words that I'm using, but like a sensing of, if we use a simple example of like people showing up on time and a leader saying it's really important that everyone shows up to these meetings on time, but the leader themselves can often be late or hold time loosely. Right. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
way of being that they're showing up that actually then gets reflected in the team, and people not showing up, on time or being a bit looser with time. And then a
Mm-hmm.
leader being willing to take responsibility for seeing like maybe it's a blind spot, maybe not, but maybe it's a realization through conversations that they're showing up in a way that is actually out of alignment with the way that they want for themselves and for their team. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so being willing to look at that and being willing to practice different things to get them more in alignment with the way they want to be in their role.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, my old CEO would probably benefit a lot from this, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's always late to meetings and stuff.
Hmm.
So I can see how a
Yeah.
lot of people might logically understand what's best for them to do, but then
Yeah.
actually doing it and being it is something completely different that
Yeah.
maybe they don't practice, as much. So, but
Yeah.
it sounds awesome.
Hmm.
Um, and in terms of the future and what it holds for you and Minakami and all these things, is there anything that you're looking forward to as we're in maybe the second half of this year when this podcast comes out? But
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, my love and passion for local community has just really been on fire, particularly over the past 2 years. And so I've got a few different projects going on here related to that. One of them is this event we call Haretoke, Minakami Haretoke Stories. And Haretoke means Hare is like Hare no Hi, like a Matsuri day, like a festival day. And Kei is like just like a normal everyday thing. And so it's this event where we bring together a local chef and a local artist. And then we invite locals to come and enjoy the food and the art and then get into conversation based on a theme. Um, and ultimately, we move towards the end of talking about the future of Minakami and like what kind of a vision people want for the community that they live in. So we did a couple of those last year. We've got the third one coming up in May, and that's just been a really fun way to bring like 20 or 30 people together and talk about like what do we want to create, believing that it's a community that can create the vision for themselves and not necessarily depending on like the town offices or something like that, but how do we create it at a grassroots level? And then another project that I'm starting is called Inaka Business Stories. And that will be a series of interviews of local business owners in Minakami to learn more about the experience of running a business in rural Japan. um, One to promote their businesses outside of Minakami and hopefully outside of Japan, but also to appeal to people that either may already be in rural Japan or maybe thinking about moving to rural Japan, and to give them a sense of what they may need to know to start something themselves. Um,
mm,
and if that goes well, I hope to take that kind of on the road to other rural areas outside of Minakami, ultimately with the potential for creating an Inaka business network. So to connect, because there's so many cool things going on in rural Japan right now, both by Japanese and non-Japanese residents. And so to create a place where we can get resources for each other, learn the different ways that we do things and how they worked. So that's kind of a longer term project. And the first round of interviews in Minakami is kind of like a research thing to see if there's a need for it, and what kind of
mm,
interesting stuff we can come up with. Um, yeah, and then on the coaching side, I'm really leaning into the retreat space and really welcoming leaders beyond Japan, kind of in the APAC, Australia, New Zealand regions, to make the trip to Japan that they've probably always wanted to or may have always wanted to anyways, but combine it with some of their own leadership development work. And so I'll be relaunching my website for that in the next month or two, just with a real strong invitation to come and try this work and to try the retreat as an initial offering and to see, does the coaching work for you, right? And if not, like if the retreat is enough, that's great. But if it feels like, yeah, this is good work to be in, then moving into the full year of leadership coaching. So I'm kind of putting all my eggs in that basket this year, and we'll see what the hell happens with it.
mm. Well, it sounds like
Yeah,
you've got plenty of different baskets,
yeah,
from what
that's true
you've
too.
mentioned. So
Yeah,
I
most of
think,
them
yeah,
don't earn money yet.
mm,
They're passion projects, and
I feel that.
yeah,
I feel that.
yeah,
But there's always a way. Once you have people and interest, and there's always a way to get the
yeah,
money. I think, and
yeah.
the living
I
costs hopefully not too expensive. So
Yeah, exactly,
that
exactly.
makes it nice
And
too.
yeah, and I've always held, or up until recently, I've held that like my community work in Minakami could never have overlap with my coaching because I'll never find clients here, at least not the type that I'm looking for and all that. And now I'm starting to see like, oh, wait a minute, like if I'm
Mm,
starting to talk to businesses and grow the network in that way, then
mm,
there could totally be overlap. And then, as I mentioned before, by bringing leaders out here, there's also the overlap of how I contribute to my communities. Again, this is stuff that I never anticipated 5 years ago when I
mm-hmm.
started it. And it's just like, yeah, it's the icing on the cake, man. It's really sweet.
Hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can see your
Yeah.
passion when you're talking about this too.
Yeah.
And I guess just to one of the maybe capping off questions is, this podcast originally was made for recruiters who are
Mhm.
considering, what's next. And I hear from a
Yeah.
lot of people, what can I do in Japan?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I think I can be an English teacher or a recruiter, and I don't know IT, so I'm screwed.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, as someone who's done it, as someone who's making it, you've been an English teacher and a recruiter, and you've also been,
Yeah.
a coach and a kind of community builder. So,
Mm.
what would be maybe some advice that you would give to people who are in that position that they're wondering what what should I do next? What can I do next? How do I make a next step?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of off the cuff answers, but the first one that comes up is like, how can you like learn to really love this place? And by this place, I mean Japan, and like,
Mm,
how can you check in with yourself about whether your heart is really there? Because that's so critical. Japan can be a challenging place in a lot of ways.
mm,
So check in with like, how can you love this place? And a big part of that, of course, involves language. It's just going to be easier if you work on your language from a place of like really wanting to be more part of the culture and the people. Um, so that's part of it. And then the other part is, how can you be of service? How can you be of service to people? And it's not always necessarily service that earns you money, but it's service that shows you like one of my favorite stories from moving out to Minakami is, within 6 months of moving out here, someone gave me a K truck, and it was as simple as me showing up to like the community weed cutting days and just
mm-hmm,
doing stuff like that, like caring about my neighborhood and offering to help out. And then people are just like, the generosity is endless. Right. So
mm,
how can you look for opportunities to be in service to people and be in partnership with people that lets them know that like you're around for it and, really care. And, some of this stuff may be a little bit more specific to the rural situation that I'm in.
mm,
Um, yeah, and in terms of skills, like just like what gets you fired up, what gets you fired up that you can start to learn about and then start to put that into some kind of use. Um, Ideally in a professional setting, whether it's getting hired somewhere or starting your own thing. But it's pretty hard do to make much progress with stuff if it doesn't really feel like it's in alignment for you, right?
yeah.
Um, so that's your own work of finding what is that thing for you. What is the thing that gets you up in the morning?
Mm,
That could be turned into a skill to be used to get to stick around. The world of work is just changing so fast right now. It's ridiculous, man.
mm-hmm,
Um, so yeah, it's not in some ways it's not an easy road for younger people right now, maybe, but man, it's a lot of possibility. So much
yeah.
possibility right now. Yeah.
A lot of unknowns, a lot of adventure,
Yeah.
if you want to frame it like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, totally.
yeah. Awesome. Thank
And
you.
I mean, compared to a lot of places around the world, like the stability and the convenience and the reliability and the community of people in Japan is pretty damn high level. So if you're here right now, I feel strongly that it's a good place to be. And again, as long as you're doing what you can to really integrate into a community or into culture here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fully agree with all those points. Then I'm still waiting on my K truck though. I'm volunteering. No one has offered me K truck. I get some
Yeah.
nice lunches and dinners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
nice man.
Do you ever, do you ever get to answer that question on your podcast? Because I'm curious what you're saying to young
Answer.
recruiters or people. Yeah, the question about how to do other stuff other than recruiting or English teaching.
Mm, yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is like, first of all, let's be realistic about it. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, the dream is necessary. So maybe that's the first, is have a dream,
Hmm.
like you said.
Hmm.
What do
Hmm.
you want in the future? That
Hmm.
will help you to then think about maybe I need to save up a little bit of money, right?
Hmm.
That's gonna just, I mean, for me personally, I did not plan it. I was like
Hmm.
you, I just kind of went for it, and I was like,
Yeah.
this feels like my only option is to go and surf. And luckily, I have money that I've saved up from
Hmm.
working hard that I can just take some time out
Yeah.
and think and
Yeah.
decompress. And what is that dream? But if I was really smart, or if I had a coach, I truly believe that I could have positioned myself potentially even better,
Hmm.
right? To leave even earlier
Hmm.
with a plan, or
Hmm.
to have saved up even more money with that
Hmm.
motivation that this is what I'm working towards. So I would
Yeah.
never tell someone like just pursue your dream and not have some kind of safety net to
Yeah.
catch you, because I can just feel that that takes off so much pressure,
Yeah.
from me. I can do what you just said and spend 2, 3 days a week just purely volunteering in the community, or like going and learning about how they build old Japanese houses, or how they do farming, and leaving those spaces open to serve, right? And that yoyu and
Yeah.
space that you have to have, it's something that you build yourself, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not something maybe that you'd only build internally. You might need to have a certain amount of money to feel that freedom. So I guess it's the balance of both of them, is don't feel tied to this salary and this paycheck, but like see what it can do for you if you're a recruiter.
Yeah.
And on the other side, yeah, what can't you do in Japan?
Yeah.
It's what can't you
Yeah.
do? There's
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
opportunities, like you said, and there's tons of infrastructure. There's tons of old people with great knowledge. There's beautiful
Yeah.
scenery. Like there's
Hmm.
so much to offer if
Yeah.
you just get out there and use some of your energy. So
Yeah.
you got me talking. We'll get stopped
It's
now
great,
before it
man.
goes on too long.
Great.
But
Great.
thank you
You actually
for coming on.
you sparked one other thing in me
Yeah, please go
as kind
ahead.
of advice or something to think about, and that is just like don't underestimate the length of the relationships that you're creating in your work right now, right? Like I'm
Mm,
still very close to some of the people that I worked with in CDS, almost 20 years ago,
mm,
right? So just really cherish, Japan is such a place of relationships, and just don't underestimate like how long you'll get to be in relationship with those people and how useful that will be to you and you will be to them eventually, and just it's
mm,
really something that's been coming up for me and
mm,
again, like, oh, I had one conversation with this person and then all of a sudden 6 months or a year, 2 years later, there they are again. It's like, oh wow, just like really
mm.
cherish the thread of those relationships that you create and treat them with care.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thank you. Yeah, for sharing this and sharing
Mhm.
about your story. Is there anything else that you want to say?
Just come to Minakami, man. I love it when people come out here. I do Adventure Mondays a couple times a month, and it's just a free day to come and hang out and be in the mountains or on the water or whatever. So I'd love to show you this beautiful place if you have any interest.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll probably make another trip up there in the summertime. But
cool.
thank you for
Cool.
this winter. It was great. And
Yeah, man, that was
yeah,
fun.
highly recommend Minakami and getting out there.
Yeah,
Thanks again,
awesome.
Corey.
Thanks, Levi. Really appreciate it.
All right.